a tunnel, and your world gets dark, do you throw away the ticket and jump out? Of course not. You sit still and you trust the engineer to get you through. Keep trusting him, ladies. It is the same God that was with you with your success, with your happiness. It's the same God that will go through with failures that are maybe your own or that are surrounding you. He's the engineer, and he will get you through because he can see it all. And he goes before you do. Second, he also goes before us with our foes, with our enemies. Now, James, we studied it last year. Y'all know I refer to James 13:14 as the LSD in the Bible. And that is with the King James Version. ESV says desire. King James says lust. Every man is tempted, as we all are, when he is drawn away from with his own lust and enticed. Once you've drawn away from the Lord, walking toward that temptation, walking toward your desire and through your lust, and you're enticed, then you have connected to that sin. And when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. Now, this lust of jealousy had been conceived, and it had been planted, and it had been taken care of, and it had been fed. And now it is open sin at this point. Saul was not hiding it anymore, because it had grown and grown and grown. He couldn't. He tells his son and his household servants they should kill David, our hero. Let's kill David. That is what I'm telling you to do. This thing is breaking out, and it is causing the ones closest to the king, to Saul, to lie and to plot and to put their own lives in danger to protect the innocent. David must have been a bit fearful when the king's men were hanging out at his house waiting for him. Psalms 59, I highly encourage you to read it. It is a Psalms that is believed, I bet if you look in your Bible, you'll see the notes, that is believed to have been written during this time exactly. Probably when they were watching and waiting at the home that night. And David did in this Psalms what he does in many Psalms afterward. This is one of the early Psalms. Psalms is not necessarily written in chronological order. This is one of the early Psalms. And he did the same thing that he does many times after. He first just told God. He told God, he cried out for help. Deliver me, save me, protect me from those who lie in wait for my life. And then here's David back. The David we saw with Goliath. He expresses his confidence the rest of that chapter in the Lord. Matter of fact, he compares those enemies and says that God will laugh at them. So David is back. He is doing the same thing. He is trusting God. He does not know what to do with Saul and in this situation, but he is still trusting God. He went back to what he knew to do. He ran to shelter to the one who was sent by God to anoint him. And Samuel led him to a lot of godly men, prophets that were prophesying. And Naioth is not a place. It means abode of prophets. So that's where David was. And I feel David felt safe there. At this time, I felt also it was important before what lied ahead that he was surrounded by men of God. I read a story of a little boy on a plane that was experiencing violent turbulence. Have you ever been on a plane that experienced a lot of turbulence? I don't mean one little drop. I have. I've been on a lot of planes. I'm glad it wasn't my first ride. But when we got off, they had said, when we finally got to the car, you know it takes forever at the Atlanta airport. The radio said a tornado had just went over the airport. I said, well, that explains everything. But there was a lady who was sitting there going through this turbulence, and I remember jerking this way, jerking that way, thought I was going to throw up before it was over because I had gotten so motion sickness. But this little boy that was next to her, he just kept playing through it all. He had his little cars, and he just kept playing, and it was really getting on her nerves. And so she said, little boy, just please stop it. Stop having so much fun when this plane is going through this. And the little boy just put his hand on the lady's hand and said, lady, the papa's my pilot. Now, I have little ones, and my husband's Papa. And anytime something's broke, I'm telling you, I'm not making it up, they say, well, we'll just take that to Papa. Or that when the refrigerator's broke, told my son BJ, call Papa. I love that so much. You know, when your Papa is the pilot, or when your Abba, Father, is the pilot or the engineer of the train, you can be confident that He's got you. Even when your foes are right in your camp, like Saul came right in their camp. Let me tell you, don't do that. You're going to end up naked for several days. Just humble. You never know what the Lord may do when your enemy shows up in your camp, if you're surrounded by Him, and you are. And trust Him with your enemy, whatever it is. If you can see what to do or not see what to do, trust Him. You know the verse that God be for us, who can be against us? God goes before us, and He is for us. And then third, sweet, sweet beauty of God going before us with our friends. Dr. Tony Evans says a real friend are those people, when you make a fool of yourself, doesn't think you've done a permanent job. Proverbs says a friend is someone who is there when the good times aren't. Matthew and James shows that a friend is someone who gets in your way when you're on your way down. True friend is a truth teller. Don't reject them. Proverbs also says a friend is someone who comes in when the world walks out. Now, that friend was Jonathan, and that friend is also Jesus. Jonathan and David's friendship were exactly the kind of godly friendship that God intends for you to be and intends for you to have. Now, let's talk about Jonathan just a minute. Jonathan has been leading troops for a while, for some time now. Remember, we took notice of him in chapter 14 when he had led with faith, like David. Remember, his daddy wasn't doing such a good job with the Philistines. And he said those words, nothing can hinder the Lord, whether it's with a few men or a lot of men. They were going straight up to camp. And he defeated the Philistines with the faith like David. But for some reason, Jonathan went out there with Goliath. Jonathan, I don't think, knew what to do with Goliath. Now, Jonathan was about, at the least, 10 years older than David. But a lot of things say 15 to 20 years. But I think when he saw the faith that David had, they connected. I mean, how could they not? And you know, David, why was it David? Of course, he was anointed and he was supposed to be king. And we talked about last week, we don't know if he actually knew that anointing was for kingship. But God had trained him. He had went before him in the shepherd field. I mean, I don't know how many other shepherds had bears and lions come up. Lions and tigers and bears. We were talking about yesterday. That's the Wizard of Oz. He just needed a tiger to come up. But he had trained him already, and he knew what to do. God went before him. He was there, and there it says that they were knitted together. And we know who that was. They had the same like mind when it come to God. And he recognized it. And unlike his daddy, he was humbled, not threatened. He wasn't jealous of his friend's success in a place that should have been his, really. It says that their hearts both wanted to please God in different places, as we have studied already. Mabel Hale in the book Beautiful Girlhood says a person is made better or made worse by their friends. Oh, let God pick your friends. Jonathan made David better. God knows who is a true friend and who isn't. Let's consult him on this matter, ladies. Be careful. If there's a check in your spirit, listen to it. Come back and ask God, why do I have that check in my spirit? And embrace the ones that he sends your way. In closing, we can compare, and I've been doing this. I've been so excited. We can compare Saul's conspiracies against David with the political and religious establishments that conspired against Jesus. Always have been trying to end since we started with how this compares with Jesus. And I got so excited. I went glamping this fall break. Has anybody been glamping? Somebody shook their head. Are you scared to raise your hand? That meant you're not a true camper. So I went glamping with my daughter. Not camping, but glamping. I highly recommend it. But inside this glamorous tent, we found something on the front. It said the Jesus Bible. And my sarcastic daughter, and I said yesterday, I don't know where in the world she got that from, but my sarcastic daughter said, "Oh, imagine a Bible about Jesus." But the Bible is awesome because it brings Jesus from the Genesis all the way through, where he's at through all of that. So I said, "Oh, I've got to get this," because I've been really trying to research this as we've done this study. But Saul wanted to hang on to his kingship over God's people without God. And he turned into an ugly, green-eyed monster as jealousy is often referred to. And the religious people did not even recognize the Messiah. I sadly have seen churches or bodies in the church that are like the religious people without Jesus. Oh, what a bright idea that we as a religion might be like Jesus, right? Jealous like Saul, the Pharisees plot murder. They recruit Judas to try to assassinate them in their plot, and he is tormented by an evil spirit. Even Pilate's wife is haunted by bad dreams. Everyone in Israel seems to recognize this Jesus as God's chosen king, except those who are blinded by jealousy, those that are blinded by pride, those that want to hang on to their power. But while David escapes Saul's conspiracies, Jesus doesn't. At least that's what they think at first. His followers thought all was lost and dark for them. The rug had been taken out from them. Everything they thought they believed was gone, but it wasn't. God went before every one of us, before we were born, before every sin we ever committed, and made a way out of no way. God goes before us with the good and the bad, the sin, the ugly, and the little things and the big things, with the Goliaths and with the Sauls. So where are you right now? Are you in the middle of successful happiness and peace, or are you struggling? Are you have a Saul and you know exactly what you got to do, but it's still scary? Or are you in a situation where you just are not quite sure what to do? You've got to make a choice. So I'm going to ask you, are you going to choose to trust God? It's a practice. And sometimes when you say, it's not that easy just to say, I trust God, I get it. If you just give him just what you got. What have you got? Just a mustard seed of faith. Just give him what you've got. I've been in a situation when I literally had to say, okay, I believe you're God. I don't believe you're going to handle this problem, but I do believe you're God. But you keep on, and you keep on. And I mean, very quickly, you'll be there. Because that's who he is. He goes before you. David also says he goes behind you, and he hems us in. Will you choose